Yes, I did. I too. It's beautiful music. I love coming here. My church, we have no live music. I pastor at the Oakland and Unitarian Universalist Church, and we're teeny tiny, and we don't really get live music very often. So it's just absolutely beautiful, and to see you all come and light. So just want to acknowledge the concerns and the joys that you lit there, and just I hold those as well. It's beautiful to see the beloved community in that way. It's just gorgeous and meaningful and all that kind of stuff. So thank you. I want us to, oh, I just got to take a minute to acknowledge it. Last time you didn't have that screen up there. And for an extrovert like me who does tend to like to see themselves on TV, now every time I look up, there I am. So this could be a bit distracting. This could become a very long message, but for the record, we did start a little late. So if I go a little long, it's on you, not me. Okay. I just want to put that out there. Somebody did not start as close to on time. So I just want to be clear. Oh my gosh. Yes. Every time I look up there, I am. So I'm trying to not look at the time and not, oh, this is going to be, oh, my hair's a little off today. I'm not going to lie. Oh, this is not good for me. Yeah, sure. It's a little, I don't know if I should. Okay. All of that aside. I want us to spend Juneteenth has become one of my all-time, I mean, just for lots of reasons, which we'll get into, but I want us to think, first of all, I want to take us down to a little story lane. Can you walk with me down a little story that happened to me this week that for me has been incredibly insightful and helps me move into this story of Juneteenth? Because I don't know exactly how to approach the story of Juneteenth in so many ways, because I'm kind of filled with rage about the whole thing, about lots of parts of it. Okay. And I'll get into that in a minute. I'm rage filled. Okay. For lots of reasons. And I love rage. Okay. Don't get me wrong. Rage is good for me because rage is energy and I can just be like that. And I can live on rage for a long time, but that's not always the most productive place to be. So this story actually kind of helps me get into a better place and helps me to get into this holiday and understand it and some of its ramifications, and maybe even help me be a little more productive and a little less rageful. So this is actually a true story. So this week, I'm retired from teaching now and I've got more time, and my house had become overrun. This is absolutely true. That my house had been overrun with the trees, the brush. I mean, we've lived there 20 years and not done any tree work. We've done some big tree work, but none of the brush or anything. And we're like, oh my gosh, we've got to start thinking about the future. All right. Are we going to live in this house or not? All those things you think about when you retire, right? So we're thinking about all those things we call nature's canopy. Gotta love nature's canopy. Shout out to nature's canopy. Love those guys. We call them out. We say, guys, we got this estimate and all this stuff. So they're going to show up. They show up on Wednesday was the day they were going to show up. And my wife, she works from home. Thank goodness. She's the one that's in charge of our yard and everything. She really is you guys have heard me preach before. I'm not a nature girl. Okay. No, nothing, hate nature. So my plan would have been to go somewhere else all day while she handled the nature guys. Right. Sadly, after 4 years of working from home, guess what she has to do all this last week? They called her into the office. What? She's not worked in the office for 4 years. I'm like, what? I think she made it up. I really do. I think she just wanted to see me sweat. So she goes, you're going to have to deal with the nature guys. I'm like, what? Turns out they're great guys. So they show up on Wednesday and yes, I'm going to have to. So she sends me the bid. So I know, okay, she walked me through the yard the night before. Here's exactly what they have to do. Here's my precious lilac bush. Here's my precious something else. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, please put a ribbon on. I'm not going to know what these things are. Like, I'm not going to save them. I don't know nature. The pressure was a lot for me. Okay. A lot already. I'm stressing out. I don't love nature that much already, but the guys show up. They're great. They got trucks. They got all this stuff. We're standing out in the yard. We haven't actually started yet at this point. And I'm walking them through, because I had to show them where all the lilac bush was. Who knew? It doesn't look like a bush to me. Okay. I just can't quite get it. I love lilacs when they're like, cut and sit in my kitchen or something, but it doesn't look like a bush to me. Anyway, I know that's aside. But anyway, I've showed them all the things. We're standing far out in the yard. We're chatting. And it turns out I really like these guys. We got a lot in common. I'm sharing about my running stories and they're chatting. I probably chatted 20 minutes. I probably should have had them working though, now that I think about it. That was probably on the clock and on me. But anyway, we won't share that with Nancy. But anyway, we're standing out there talking. And while we're talking, the last thing I said to them was this. I said, and I'm joking, I go, and whatever you do, don't drop a limb on my fancy Jeep that I love more than my children most days of the week. And just as I said those words, I am not kidding you, this happened. It was the strangest thing. Yeah. Just as we're standing there talking, I know. Just literally, we are standing in the yard talking, and we hear the snap, crackle, pop of the catalpa tree, a tree that actually has one of our healthiest trees in the yard. They've actually taken weight off a couple years ago. We love this tree. Even I, who's not a nature girl, love this tree because it grows really weird, like it's spooky looking. I don't know if you know catalpa trees, but they weird looking. Even I have an appreciation for this tree because it is strange and was anyway. We hear the snap, crackle, pop, and all of a sudden a limb from way high up, because it's a big old tree, comes down and takes out everything underneath it. And that is exactly where it lands, right there. You can show more. Let's just take a moment to mourn the damage. Yeah. 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 There's more. Yeah. 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 We can pause there and we'll just leave that there for a minute for us all to take in. Again, I truly do love this more than my children most days of the week. She's sitting out there today in all of her shattered glory. But in the Jeep world, though, I got to say she's pretty tough looking now. You know, when you see another Jeep driver in your Jeep, that's kind of cool, actually. But anyway, all that aside, she is going to the body shop on Tuesday. I share this story with this. Now, please bear with me. If you were just driving down my street and you saw all the Nature's Canopy guys out there and you saw my Jeep under all those limbs, it would be natural and normal for you to think what? They dropped a limb on my Jeep, right? That is because it wasn't storming. It wasn't raining. The guys were there working on trees. Their trucks were there. It was all there. Of course, they dropped that limb on my Jeep. That's of course what happened. I mean, that's would be normal for you to think that and imagine that as you drove by my house and saw my crushed baby Jeep under there. That would be what you would think. And you were not totally wrong, but you got some parts of the story wrong. My Jeep did get crushed. Limbs did fall on it, but you would have some aspects of the story wrong because you're just driving by it and you're not getting the depth of the story. You're just getting kind of the general gist of the story of what happened there. And as I thought more about that, because we were laughing, the guys and I, they'd never seen anything like that happen before. And they were so grateful I was out there because imagine them. If they had to call Nancy and I go, hey, we hadn't started work yet, but limbs just fell on your Jeep. We'd be like, yeah, right. We like you guys, but there is no way. That's why you're there. You're cutting limbs. Of course you dropped it on our Jeep. Get a grip. You know, they were so glad I was out there to see what, because I got to tell you, we literally were standing by the mailbox talking and it just happened. There was nothing. Thank God I didn't have the keys because I probably wouldn't be staying because I would have done anything to save my baby. It would have been like the stories, you know, of the duck that spreads her wings over the baby. That would have been being not my baby. But there was nothing we could do. I share that story because as I've been thinking about this message, and I did part of this message earlier at Oak Landon too, because it lives in my heart, it lives in my mind. It's never away from me, this message, because of the context I taught in and live in and work in. This message is never far from me. But as I thought about this tree situation, as I thought about my neighbors driving by going, oh my gosh, not going to call them. And I thought about Nature's Canopy. They joked, they said, can we put a sign up that says we did not drop that? Because their trucks were out there with the name and all that kind of stuff. I go, I will go put a shout out on my Insta page that this wasn't you. That was a total freaky thing. But anyway, so do call Nature's Canopy. They did not do any of it. They're great guys. And in fact, they quickly got me another quote, God bless them, about the hours it would take to, you know, unearth my Jeep. And they did it for me and it was great. But if you think about Juneteenth, all right, and if you think about history, even broadlier than that, broadlier, I doubt if that's a word, but I like to make up my own words. But if you think about history, even broader than that, so much of what we're taught is that little drive down the road. And we look over and go, oh, tree trimmers, big trucks, branches on Jeeps, must have been a big crash there. Those crazy guys, not going to call them. And that's what all you know. So you just keep driving and that informs your opinion, doesn't it? And you don't call Nature's Canopy, do you? And you hear about Nature's Canopy and you go, well, I'm not calling them. Do you see what they did to Mills's Jeep? Huh, not going to have them around. But they didn't do that to my Jeep. That's not the whole picture. That is not all of the stories. And in this day and age, I think it is time, and Juneteenth speaks to us, calls to us, shouts to us to stop the car. Everybody say, stop the car. Oh, stop the car and get out and talk and get to know the history around what happened in my yard, get to know the history of everybody involved in the story, not just what was taught, not just the little picture you got driving by. And I'm just going to share my experience of it. All right. But history is more than just perhaps what we were taught in our little books. There is so much more because we live in this technological society. There's this thing called Google. Say it with me, Google. I just an old person, so I like the Google. I get on the Google, and there are some things that are true there and some that aren't. I've looked, my kids inform me of that all the time. Mom, that's not really true. Oh, really? It's not? Okay. But yes, you can, there are ways that we can start to hear other stories and we can get a fuller picture. We can get more context around things. So I no longer accept, well, that's not what they taught me in school. They only gave you the drive-by. At least if you were brought up in my era, they probably only gave you the drive-by. All right. It is our responsibility to get out of the car, and start to get a broader understanding and look at history. History is not just about who had power to tell the story. History is about all the voices in the story. All the voices need to be seen and heard and understood. It doesn't mean the people that drove by were wrong. They're right. A tree did fall on my Jeep, and there were people there. They got a lot of it right, but they missed a lot of it too. You know, it's not blaming anybody, but it's getting out of the car and saying, hey, there's a lot more story here. There's a lot more richer and more amazing. Think about it. If you get out of my car and ask me about the tree story, the story just gets more amazing, doesn't it? It gets more unbelievable. And I mean, wow. I believe that's true of history as well. It gets more mind-blowing and good and bad in every kind of way when we get out of the car and really start to hear the stories. And that can inform us, that can empower us, that can change us, that can drive us to change and have an impact on society and on the world around us. So it's very important. That's why when this thing happened in my car and I was working on this message, like, oh, this works for me. I don't know if it works for you, but it worked for that metaphor. That story really helps me to think about, you know, getting the rest of the story and understanding what that might mean. I want us to think that brings me then to exactly, you probably all know what Juneteenth is, but I'm just, one of the reasons I'm filled with rage is I never knew what Juneteenth was until like, I hate to, this is probably going to be on the Facebook or something, but it was like only about 4 or 5 years ago that I learned what Juneteenth even was, you know, and I have to carry that and I have to own that, and I'm sad about it, and I'm probably going to get emotional about it. I hate that about me, but I'm going to own it because I can't change it and I can't deal with it unless I own it. I could keep ignoring it, but I'm not going to keep ignoring it. I'm going to acknowledge the fact that I didn't even know what it was till then. All right. There are reasons for that. I can't speak. I'm only going to share from my own personal experience, but I grew up in middle America. Well, Indiana to be exact, Delaware County, the middle of nowhere. And in, I was going to say a predominantly white area, but let's be real. It was an all white area. I don't think anybody in my school had melanin in their skin, to be quite honest. There were migrant workers that would come in the fall for a while, and then they would be gone. They were a part of the farming system and that sort of thing, but that was it. And we were not, I was never taught anything other than there was Lincoln signed the thing to free the slaves and slavery was over and we moved on. Again, the car drive by. That was all I was ever taught. You know, that's all I ever knew. There is so much more, so much more. Imagine my surprise and to learn about the whole history of Juneteenth. And then as I unpack the history of Juneteenth, and well, due to time constraints, I don't have time to unpack a lot more of other things I've learned about, but looking at Tulsa riots and looking at all kinds of other things, it just became this other, like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things I don't know about. A lot of people's stories I don't know that I need to know because they're important and impactful and are a part of our history. Some of them are stunning and some of them are break your heart. Some of them lift your heart. All of that, they're all a part of us. And the beauty that is our quilted history together. I look at our quilts, I can't help that. It's the same thing. That's the beauty that is us. So I didn't learn, but when I came to know and understand Juneteenth, you know how I came to know it? There's only one way to come to know Juneteenth, I believe, if you're an old white lady. It's through an old black lady. I share her with pride here. I think she'd be proud of me. I don't know if my heart would literally burst and shatter if I ever met this lady. Oh, I'm going to be emotional. She's a teacher. She taught in the public school system for a lot of years, but guess what she did? She retired. Woo, guess what I just did? I retired. You know what it's easy to do when you retire? I don't know, I just retired, so I'm not there yet. I'm still in the clean your house, fix your yard stage. But I hear that after you retire and you clean your house and fix your yard, that it's easy to kind of go, well, I've done what I can do. Next generation, go right ahead. But that is not what this fine lady did. Her name is Opal Lee. All right. And Opal Lee, I'm going to try to give us the history. Juneteenth. She is the catalyst behind how it became a national holiday. This great lady, this teacher, this retired person, there she is. She said, you know what, this needs to be a national holiday. She's from Texas. And the reason that's important is because once Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, that didn't just end slavery. On paper, perhaps it did, but the Civil War kind of raged on. And it wasn't until the Union soldiers, it took 2.5 years. I did not know this. 2.5 years for the final slaves to get the word that they were freed. And that was in Galveston, Texas. And that is where the celebration of Juneteenth actually began. 2.5 years it took for the word to get to them that the Emancipation Act had been signed. 2.5 years. So it was signed, more of the war had to go on. And don't even get me started. That did not mean they were necessarily free in the northern states either. You can dig into your history there and be a little bit shocked as well. Okay, I'm just putting that out there. But it took 2.5 years for that to happen. So that is where, but when they landed, it was around June 19th is when that word came. Imagine that, to hear that you were freed. Now, that would be most a jubilation. But also, I'm sure that maybe they saw the date on that and had a little bit of a pissed mode too. Oh, I said pissed out. I don't know if that's a bad word. Is that a bad word? I don't know. But I'm retired. What are you gonna do? Fire me? I'm retired. No. But the 2.5 years, that's what we celebrate in Juneteenth. That's summarizing it very, very quickly. But Juneteenth is a celebration of the last group of slaves hearing that they were freed 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. For me, that I didn't get that growing up. It was only about 3 or 4 years ago that I really kind of was able to take that in and understand what that was. So in Texas and some of the southern states, that's kind of always been a celebration because that's where the 2.5 years, that's where the last slaves were freed. And so that had always been kind of a celebration. Opal Lee grew up in that area. And get this as a part of her history. Okay, I'm going to share with you. This is why this woman is so, when she was about 10, growing up in Texas, her parents bought a house, but it was in a predominantly white area. And they bought this house just like anybody else. But while they bought the house, they lived there for a while, but actually this is just, again, on June 19th, when she was around, I think it was around 10 to 12, a mob came and actually burned her house down. And as this 10 or 12 year old girl, she saw the police stand back and witness that. And her house burned down and her family was moved and I don't know. Not enough time to unpack all of that, but I want you to hear this. All of us in some ways, and we can't understand that trauma completely, but this little kid experienced that. Okay. And I can't begin to imagine what that feels like or understand it. But so I just want to be clear that Opal did not have rosy kind of feelings about Juneteenth in many ways. She had experienced some of the worst of racism and at a very young, impressionable age. But she went on to work in the school systems and to do her best. And then when she retired, she continued to she says, you know what, this needs to be a national holiday. The world still ain't right. The world still ain't right. Everybody say the world still ain't right. The store still ain't quite right, and it's okay that it's not quite right because that gives us something we got to work on. We got to move towards. All right. And that's what she said. So she began, even after she retired, even as she's in her 80s, she begins this campaign to make Juneteenth a national holiday. Is it easy to begin making something a national holiday? No, it involves politics and getting Congress and the president and all that. Is that easy? Or oh my goodness, everybody shake your head. No, none of that's easy. I don't care what side of the political aisle you're on. Nothing that involves that is easy. So what she began to do, she said, I'll show them. I'm gonna start walking 2.5 miles. 2.5 miles. I'm gonna walk 2.5 miles all the way every day till I get to Washington, D.C. And that's what she did. This lady, who was in her 80s, she's walking 2.5 miles. And me, I'm a runner. All right. I love to run. I don't know if you've seen me, but I'm going to run the New York City Marathon. Next time I preach, I'll share more about that. But anyway, she says, I'm going to walk. I'm going to try to get momentum going. I am going to get momentum going and try to get people inspired. She's going to walk through different states and try to get people inspired and call them to this, that we need a national holiday to mark Juneteenth and how important it is. And that's what begins to happen. People see her walking and see what's going on, and but thanks to social media, some big stars. And I'm summarizing this journey. Okay. Read her book. This is the story I like to read. I brought her small book down there, and get on the internet. Oh my God, she's amazing. Get her interviews do not stop. She's 97 now, still kicking butt and taking names. I would not go in a ring with her. I mean, she'd take me out in a second, I'm sure. She is amazing. But anyway, she began this walk, push comes to shove. I mean, she stuck with it. She did not stop. And every year I still do. She has an actual run now. I do it virtually because I can't go to Texas. Well, I could go to Texas. I just haven't yet. But you run, and it's 2.5 miles. For those of us that are runners, you never run to it. You do a 5K or you do a 10K. So that's why I love it. It's 2.5 miles. Buddy, I stopped the clock at 2.5. Empowered to her. Okay. And then I go, but anyway. But she did this, and she caught fire, and people caught fire around her. And it was the time of George Floyd, and it was the time of Breonna Taylor, and it caught fire. And because of her, because of this little old lady, retired school teacher, that's who she is. That's who kind of I am, or going to be. I'm getting that way, because of her. It's never too late. That's what I take from her story. It's never too late. Okay. Because of her, and because of her walk, and because of her fire, and because people saw that genuineness in her, they followed her. And guess what happened? You know what happened? Yeah, national holiday. Juneteenth is a national holiday. Biden signed it. Congress, somehow we got something through Congress, or I don't know how it all happened, but woo, I don't know, but it worked, okay? And she did it. She did it. I'm sure there were lots of people around her, and I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff that went in there, but by goodness, she was the driver of that. And you want to know the rest of the story that happened this year? Oh my gosh, if this don't give you some tears, I don't know what will. She'd been trying to buy the land remember that house that burned down when she was 10 or 12, around that age? She really wanted to buy that land. It was kind of her dream to one day maybe put a house on that. That's kind of what she wanted. And she didn't know who owned the land. Well, it turned out, guess who owned the land? Habitat for Humanity. And she does this she goes in the interview, she says something to the effect, I've been on the board of Habitat for Humanity. I did not know they owned, she was just going on and on. She goes, and I said, let me buy that land from you. And she goes, they would not let me buy that land. And you pause for a minute. She goes, they gave it to me. It's just a great interview. And they gave her the land. And not only they give her the land, but of course, as humanity will do when they're lifted up like that, good vibes, they built her a house. They being that whole community. If you watch the interview, they all came together and they built her a beautiful house with a beautiful porch. And if you watch the interview, she's sitting out there rocking on her porch. And one of my favorite parts, I don't know, she and I may be in somewhat a kindred spirit, but they ask, what are you bringing to your new house? She goes, I'm only bringing my toothbrush. She must be as fed up with her old house as I am with my old house. And I kind of chuckled, but then they show her in the interview and she's sitting on her front porch with her toothbrush. I think she's amazing in so many ways. But that's the little bit of how Juneteenth became a national holiday. Why is it important for all of us? I get so fed up. We should all celebrate Juneteenth. I don't care how much melanin you have in your skin. It's not a black or a white holiday. It's all of our holiday. We all own a part of it. We are all genetically, it is in us, even though we're miles, maybe years away from it in some senses, but in some senses we're not. It is a part of us. And to not celebrate it, to not acknowledge it, doesn't take it out of us. It just denies it. And that is not helpful. I don't think. I can only speak for me, but denying stuff usually isn't the way to go for me. Okay. Usually it still comes out some way, in some way that isn't very helpful. So Juneteenth is so important. I think that we acknowledge it no matter how. I laugh at my little Oakland and Unitarian Universalist church. We're a church of about 25 to 30 on a good day. None of us got no melanin, but by gosh, I made us, and they agreed, we're Juneteenth and we're going to own our part of that holiday, and we're going to acknowledge it. And we'll do what we can to repair, because what's ruptured cannot be repaired until you acknowledge it. And that is a huge rupture. And we can pretend like it wasn't a rupture, and we can ignore it. Just like I could have ignored all those limbs on my Jeep, but frankly, they were all there. The only way I can repair that baby is to start taking them off one limb at a time. The only way we can repair the damage of slavery, the damage of those ruptures, is to start to take them off one limb at a time, so to speak. And it's painful. I don't want to acknowledge that all that happened, but it did. And I kind of feel, this is just me personally, my not acknowledging it makes me much more a part of it than my acknowledging it. That's what I've come to believe. That's just me and my journey. So we can't repair until we really start to understand the rupture. And Juneteenth allows us to do that. And it may be clumsy. God knows I probably said 3 or 4 things here that really my African-American friends are going to say, Mills, I listened to your sermon, which I'll ask them to do. And they will. My good friends will say, Mills, oh my goodness, that you shouldn't have said. You misappropriated that. And I'll go, oh, thank you for letting me know. And I'll learn, and I'll be clumsy, and I will learn. But I am not going to not talk about it anymore. Because not talking about it, it will never be healed. And we must heal it. We must be a part of the repair. I'm taking that Jeep to the body shop, and they're going to start knocking them dents out. It'll be painful, but by gosh, it'll be beautiful when it's done. It will be painful. Some of the repairs are painful, but it will be beautiful when it is done. And you know what the done looks like? You know what it looks like? It looks like a house on Opal's property. We get little glimpses of the done, and that's what it looks like. That's what repair looks like. A community coming together rather than burning down. That's what repair looks like. The hurt's still there. You're not just that it happened, but you're repairing it. And perhaps it's a little more beautiful in that sense, in that way. Again, maybe this wasn't my most happiest of messages to you, but it may have been my most important. Because I think it's so important that we acknowledge and understand. And just like I don't think, my nephews go to an all-white school, or did. And we don't celebrate Martin Luther King Day because there's no Black people in my school. I'm like, oh my God. He's a part of all of our history, just like this is a part of all of our history. We all need to pause and own our part of it, whatever our part of that history is. And in whatever way that is, it's so important. And if nothing else, we as Unitarian Universalists, we fight for justice. And this is one way we can. We can carry that forward in so many ways. I'm just going to leave you with one other, how you have, when you're working on a message or a thought, you have an epiphany, or you pray to God or humanity or whatever higher power that you have an epiphany. Because if you don't, it's a real bummer preaching a sermon if you don't have an epiphany. But I had a small epiphany. So I'm just going to share this last epiphany with what's the time. The good news is the way the sun shines on it, I cannot see the clock at all. I'm just going to say, look, I cannot tell what time it is. Hallelujah. I've just had another epiphany. Woo! All right. But here's my other epiphany. Oh, I think I just hit the mic and maybe something crazy. Okay, here's my other epiphany I had. And oh my gosh, this one, I'm just going to leave you with this one. Okay. I do know this, and as a 4th grade teacher, I was really big on, I was like, oh, I want to get better at this. So we did Harriet Tubman, we did Frederick Douglass, and boy, if anybody walked in my classroom, I'd say, we're hitting African-American history. We're on it. We're on it. We got them, we got their pictures up, we're hitting it. And as I read more, I had this little epiphany, and people, as you read, I call that, they were really calling me to attention. And what I was getting from what I've been reading is, yeah, Mills, that's nice. And those people are great. But hardly any of us are going to be Harriet Tubman or Frederick Douglass, okay? Look at you, Mills. Are you either of them? No, I'm not got that kind of courage or that kind of smarts. All right. I'm just never going to have that. I'm a regular person. All right. And what my epiphany was, when we don't do all of history, we miss the voices of the regular people. The people who were resisting slavery that weren't Harriet Tubman, all those regular people, those wonderful people, all right, that resisted by marrying, even when they shouldn't have. I mean, my gosh, they had no idea what was going to happen to that person they loved. But by God, they resisted. They said, I'm gonna start a family. We're gonna give it a try. That's an act of resistance. Just as strong. I'm not dissing Harriet, but just as strong as Harriet. The little kid that picked up a book when they were told not to learn to read. That is an act of resistance. Just the person who sung joyfully when everything around you is not joyful at all. It's horrible, but you find joy in your heart somewhere. My friends, that is resistance. That is history. That we can learn from. That lifts us all. And when we just drive by, we don't get those voices. That was my little epiphany. I'm like, yes, that's so true. All of those little resistance voices. That is why it's so important that we hear all the voices of history. I love Harriet Tubman, don't get me wrong. I love that movie. I love the music from the movie, all that kind of stuff. But it's true. I'm no Harriet Tubman. I'm not smart like Frederick Douglass. Most of us aren't going to be. And most of the resistors weren't, but boy, they kept resisting. And their history is there for us to find and to honor and to lift up. That's why this is all so important and can be such a big part of the repair. So I just want to encourage you, don't get down, get up, get excited, because think of what you're going to discover. Look, I had an epiphany. You might have an epiphany too. I can't wait to hear all the beautiful stories of regular people that resisted. And I will draw strength from that resistance. Just like Opal Lee. Oh my gosh. Why didn't somebody tell me about her 10 years ago? That's 10 years of wonderful strength and example and superhero powers I could have had. But I didn't, because her story doesn't get lifted up. Old white woman more likely. It's just fact. I'm not dissing anything. That's just our world. All right. There is power. We can lift ourselves. This is good. This can be an example for us. Now I'm going to quit. Oh my gosh, I actually beat a pulpit. Oh, I'm going back to my evangelical days. Oh my goodness. Seriously. I am so excited for you and for me and all of us as Unitarian Universalists, as we are on this path for justice. This can guide us. I am so excited as we get out, as we discover, as we grow. I cannot be happier to be doing it in this community, in this movement together, as we seek to repair and to understand and to reach out and be beloved community, because this is where we do it. Because we can call each other and we can say, girl, or yeah, that's what beloved community is about. So we can practice it here and then we can take it out. You got it? Practice it here and take it out. You with me? Okay. 6 or 8 of you. All right. Good. I'll take 6 or 8. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And let's celebrate Juneteenth all year. What do you say? In a way, or at least the message.